Thanks for coming down. Just so you know that I'm the right person in the room. My name's Iain Potter. I work for Acquia. Had about 25, 26 years in the software industry, so aging myself a little bit there. Started out writing real-time messaging systems and embedded software. Discovered Drupal in around 2010, Drupal 6, and been working with it ever since. Joined Acquia as an architect in 2020 as part of the PS team, and then a couple of years ago moved over to technical account management. So AI bots. So I think everyone is probably concerned, or at least thinking about the pace of change that we're witnessing at the moment. And it's not surprising that the internet is at the forefront of that change. Since last year, we've seen AI-driven bot traffic increase by more than 300%. And even though human activity has dominated the web for the last 2 decades, we've only really just reached a point recently where more than 50% of web traffic is non-human. So I guess there's probably marketing teams out there kind of high-fiving each other and celebrating all the additional traffic that they've generated. But the thing is, around half of this bot traffic is actually malicious. So there are IT teams out there trying desperately to mitigate the threat of these malicious bots. And often they have ineffective and inadequate tools. So they're going around manually blocking IP addresses, IP ranges, and sometimes entire countries. And they're essentially playing a massive game of whack-a-mole that they just can't win. So the bots today, they're more sophisticated, they're more adaptive, more difficult to detect than ever before. And we've got this wave of new bots driven by LLMs, and they've got a seemingly insatiable appetite. And that's ultimately driven by us and our behavior as consumers. And we're not getting as many people visiting websites as before. They're getting information about your brand, your products and services directly from the LLM. And so we've got the marketing teams, they're basing their decisions on data that doesn't reflect actual engagement. And IT don't have the tools to solve the problem. Every organization is being tested by this. You could say we're at a crossroads or a strategic pivot point. So some people will continue to fight the same old battles and cling to old playbooks. They'll guard silos. IT are going to treat every bot as a hostile enemy, and marketing will continue to chase clicks in a world where AI answers questions directly at source. Traffic's going to start to dry up. Conversions will dwindle. We'll begin to lose influence. Brand visibility diminishes, and the costs of acquisition will begin to soar. Might sound a bit overly dramatic. I mean, what if it doesn't happen? What if traffic doesn't dry up? What if the trend we've seen and we've been on suddenly ends now and flattens out? And we always have 50% human, 50% bots. Even if we assume that that's the case, while these guys over here continue to fight the same fight and fight these costly defensive battles for 50% of the market, the guys on the other side are securing every answer, they're building influence, and they're enjoying dramatically lower customer acquisition costs. Because they don't see their site as some sort of perimeter that needs to be defended. They see it as a highly optimized knowledge graph. They structure their content so their site is the most accurate, concise, and verifiable source for any question in their domain. And when the customer is ready to click, whether that's to buy, to contact, or to explore a little bit deeper, it's them that the customer trusts, because they gave them the answer first, and the customer sees them as the expert. So anyone with a website is already playing this game, whether they choose to or not. That's the landscape we're in. So I'd like to offer some really simple strategies for improving your chances of winning. So first, we need to focus on protecting the brand. We need to block the bad bots and set intelligent guardrails for the good ones. This is going to give us cleaner analytics, reduced spend, and a marketing team that can trust its campaign performance data. Then we need to recognize that LLMs are effectively today's most influential journalists, and we need to make sure that they're quoting us correctly. We have to control the narrative. And finally, we need to think about what we can do to future-proof the brand against the click impression paradox and think even beyond answer engine optimization. Sorry, I'm just checking what time I'm on. So let's first look at what we can do to regain control over the incoming traffic. Something like a WAF or a web application firewall is a helpful static defense, if you like, but it's not really enough on its own. We need a more finely grained solution that uses machine learning and AI to identify that a request is from a bot, categorize it, and control its behavior. A good bot manager will automatically detect advanced sophisticated threats that mimic human behavior, and it constantly updates its learning. It stops the malicious bots and it restores integrity to your analytics. And then we need to be able to filter out the noisy bots. So they're not necessarily out to cause direct harm, but they're not there to help you either. They're self-serving noise with no real benefit to you. So a bot management solution will let us selectively filter these out. And finally, while we want to encourage the good bots because they're a crucial part of optimizing for AEO, we want to set some guardrails to control the behavior and make sure they're accessing the right resources in an efficient way. I've got an example here. I recently spoke to a customer who was getting hit 500,000 times a day by an LLM crawler. And it was hitting their search, their on-site search, and dynamically generating a page every time rather than getting info from a cached response. So we want to do things around that to guide the bots in the right way to protect ourselves. So not only do we need to control the bot behavior, we need to be able to identify which of those bots needs a little bit more attention. So if we think about categorization, there's three general categories. We've got the good bots, the crawlers, I think sort of Googlebot, Bing, that type of thing. We've got the bad ones, the malicious ones that are up to no good. And the ugly ones, which are the fetchers. So that's where the LLMs start to come into play. And it's actually the ugly bots that demand most of our attention because they pose a threat, but also opportunity. So if we start with the one that everyone worries about, malicious bots, they're the attackers, so botnets, DDoS attacks, credential stuffing, data theft. They're pretty easy to deal with conceptually. We obviously just need to detect them and then start blocking them. And then we have the good bots, the crawlers, as I mentioned, Googlebot, Bingbot. They're critical for making your content searchable and discoverable. But a good bot can sometimes be a bit noisy, like the crawler hitting the customer's search page that I just mentioned. In that case, we don't really want to block them completely, but we do just want to come up with some intelligent guardrails for those bots. So we can use a bot manager to tell a crawler to slow down with levers like rate limiting and to only access cache content instead of burning down the server with expensive requests. And then finally, we've got the fetchers, the disruptive ugly bots. So they're usually search bots that are initiated by LLMs, like ChatGPT, Gemini. They pull content to try and answer questions on demand, which we'll come on to in a little bit. So good fetchers, they'll always sort of quote your brand, give your brand credit, helping you win the answer. Bad fetcher is typically a data harvester or a scraper. Sometimes they can perhaps repurpose content for misinformation campaigns, things like that. They're the type of bots that we need to control. And I think this highlights a key point. A bot can be a powerful ally for discoverability, for SEO, for AEO, GEO, but only if you're in control of it. And given the enormous scale of the challenge that we have to, we have to rely a bit more on automation and AI to detect, categorize, and control this evolving bot landscape in real time. But the sheer presence of the bots isn't just a technical challenge. It's a reflection of how we, as consumers, have fundamentally shifted our behavior. And the behavioral shift has completely disrupted digital discovery. So as an example of this, we maybe used to just type in camping tips, and then we need to do the work of sifting through all of the results to find the best answer. But now expectations have changed, because we know we can get a much better answer by being more specific. So we'll say things like, how do I make camping easier with 3 young children? And instead of a list of sources that require us to do more research, we can now get a direct conversational answer that will probably prompt even more follow-up questions. So as a consumer, we get what we need and we get it faster. But where does that leave us as content creators, and how do we leverage that change? And I think to answer that, it's probably helpful to consider what's going on under the hood a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about how AI gets answers. So we start with a question. I'm sure everyone's interested in the answer to this, and everyone knows the answer, I guess. So LLMs, they start by building their own training data. They crawl the web. It's not updated that frequently, so only topics that don't change much or tend to be stored there. So, think, topics like ancient history, photosynthesis, whatever. For the more transient stuff and the more transient topics, the LLM is going to start to call a search tool via API to get some answers. So it'll come along and retrieve a list of the top results. And then the search tool will check if the answer's in metadata, in summaries, or it might even visit the site to find an explicit answer. And at that point, it's going to generate some snippets and deliver that to the LLM. And finally, the LLM is going to synthesize a response from the snippets. So I think one of the things to consider here is that we're probably all still optimizing for SEO, but the difference now is that the top results are selected based on intent and not keywords. So if you want to know, Chris Tranquil. So I think to optimize for intent-based search, we need to provide good quality training material so that the bot starts to say nice things about us. So lead with the answer. Good training material for an LLM will adopt the sort of classic inverted pyramid style, placing a clear, concise answer immediately after a question-based heading. So if you've got H2s, H3s, and things like that in your content, that's where you need to start thinking about those questions. AI is conversational. So we need to think about a conversational mapping for our content. Content needs to be mapped to predict the visitor's next question. And we need to create content that fully satisfies an entire intent journey, not just a single keyword. Alongside that, we need to be sort of conscientious of the way that the data is gathered. So we need to make sure it's in concise, extractable chunks. And we need the information to be broken down into easily digestible formats. So think things like bullet points, numbered lists, tables, that sort of thing. And avoid dense, lengthy paragraphs that are hard for an AI to parse or at least extract the real meaning from. Language should be neutral and factual, which is maybe a little bit of a change from where we are now. And we need to avoid an overly promotional or subjective way of talking that an AI might actually discard when they're seeking a verifiable source. So what we're looking for there is experience, expertise, authoritativeness, if I can get that word out, and trustworthiness in the content. And in terms of the entities on the page, the entity optimization, we need to be focusing on concepts, people, products, places, and the relationships between them rather than the keywords themselves. What that does is it helps to teach the AI that you're a central authority on a topic. And finally, how do we know if this is all, effective and working? We need monitoring in place so that we can see the effect of what we're doing. We need to make sure that the LLM responses are accurate, and we need to track where our brand is cited, and we need to correct the misinformation in real time. Essentially, we need to identify the content gaps and reinforce the strengths. So that's possibly a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot to do. I think you'll agree, especially at scale. So once you start to get a lot of content, this can become quite difficult. Might seem impossible. It's quite easy to fall into the trap of seeing this as a nice to have thing, but the landscape's changing. As we heard in the keynote, AI is not going anywhere. We have to roll with it. But it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and I hope you don't see it that way. It's actually relatively easy to attain some of this stuff if you employ a dedicated solution. And I promise this is not an advert. Other tools are available, but this is my frame of reference, so go with me. So something like Acquia content optimization is a dedicated solution that focuses on this sort of topic by trying to amplify brand visibility and increase authority within LLMs. So it's going to show how an AI might see your site. It helps you to create content that resonates not just with AI, but with a human audience as well. So at this point, what we're starting to do with whatever workflow tool, whatever you decide to put in place, we filtered the noise by getting control of the bots. Now we're shifting to influencing them. And the goal is to maximize the brand visibility by ensuring that our content is the most quotable source for the LLMs. And the solution is to master answer engine optimization with a tool like Conductor. So there's three things that we're looking to do here. Intent mapping. So we talked a little bit about that earlier. And a tool like Conductor will help shift your content strategy from optimizing for generic terms to mapping every piece of content to the conversational intent of a modern AI user. We're looking at structural optimization. We talked about the content being extractable. So you need clear, concise answers, bullet points, structured data, which is, great. Drupal's always had that. And authoritative signals. What we're trying to do is teach LLMs how to read our content by making the answers short, sharp, and easy to lift. And then we're looking at the advantage by embracing AEO, tools such as Conduct to help you secure the most valuable real estate in this new economy. And that's the direct answer within an LLM's response. And that helps to position your brand as the undeniable authority in your domain. So, again, I'm pulling some screens from Conductor because that's what we have available. But what you're looking at here is screens that help you to track brand visibility within some of these AI engines using AI search performance. So we're looking at things like ChatGPT, Google AI Mode, that type of thing. And what it's tracking is things like how often you're mentioned, whether your website is cited as a source, and importantly, how you're stacking up against the competition. And we can see we're starting to move here, if you look at the way the graphs are trending, from keyword-based search to intent-based. So we're looking at LLM intent and engagement to increase here. The other thing we can start to think about here, and again, how you choose to monitor this stuff is entirely up to you, but we're looking at things like topic sizes. So what sort of topics are we covering on the site? How much coverage have we got? And what we're starting to look for here is content gaps. So the strengths and the weaknesses in the content on our site, what we've covered well and where some stuff might be missing. And the content map here is represented by, the strong content is represented as large circles for that particular topic. And you've got smaller circles where they're showing your areas of weakness. So we're moving again beyond just tracing keywords to looking at things like intent gaps and how we can improve for the LLMs. And that's really, the tool is helping us to look at two things here, really. Gap identification, so comparing your existing content library against high demand search topics in real time, and the knowledge graphs that are used by the LLMs. And we're trying to align on intent. So it's flagging where you've got a topic, but where you're failing to answer the question or the specific questions that the users have and the AI bots, with the aim of helping you to pivot from just ranking to being a cited source. There's no slide sort of dedicated to this, but you can also see, if you look at the screenshot, there's a topic opportunity tab in there, which is, I wish I had a screen for this because it's really great. It helps to highlight what topics you might want to focus on next, which is pretty powerful. And then another element to this is the writing assistant and choosing your brand voice, your criteria. And maybe this is, a little bit different, to sort of traditional LLMs like Gemini and ChatGPT. So the writing assistant itself is powered by AI, and it's purpose-built specifically for website optimization and discoverability in LLMs and search engines. So the writing assistant combines real-time search trends and competitive insights to deliver content that aligns to your goals, answers what your audience is searching for, and increases your domain authority. The tool itself will give a content score against an objective. So you define the objective. I don't know if it's visible there, but in the sidebar on the right, there's a section for an objective, what you're trying to achieve with that content. The tool's going to analyze that, look at your content, and tell you how you can improve it, and give you that score. So by using something like this, you can effortlessly create high quality search optimized content at scale that is much more likely to get found in generative AI search surfaces. And again, you won't see this on the screen, but one particularly nice feature that I kind of like is that if you look at a heading on the page, like the one there that says maximize brand AI visibility, you can right-click on those headings and then you get a little drop-down and you can automatically create internal links in your content. And again, this is just going to help to increase sort of topical authority for this particular piece of content. And it helps with engagement for visitors. So if they're coming to the site, they're moving around much more freely between your related content. So this next screen is just that same sidebar, just scroll down. And what you're seeing here is kind of the equivalent of people also asked. So the tool is really giving you the next set of answers that you need the next set of questions that you need to provide answers for, to help feed into the guidance around that conversational content that we talked about. So I think, if anything, I hope what you might be noticing here is that all of this is also baked into the content workflow. So before we even publish an initial revision, we're getting all of this feedback around what we should be doing to maximize the impact within LLMs. Obviously we then start the feedback loop where we start to monitor and refine, but out of the gate and based on real-time insights, we've made a pretty good start on optimizing for LLM visibility and citation. So the tool has helped to operationalize AI-ready content at the point of production where it's going to have the greatest impact. And we're also supporting traditional search engine performance here as well. Can't forget the humans. But hot off the press as well, as a few days ago, Conductor is now integrated directly into Acquia CMS. So previously with tools like this, there's a bit of sort of shifting around, copying and pasting. It's now embedded directly into our DXP. If you pay for it. But that's just happened in the sort of last few days. So yeah, so what next? What I took from that talk this morning, which was brilliant, is it's kind of all up in the air a little bit, but the foundations are getting there. So we've talked a little bit here about the current landscape, how tools like Conductor can give power to marketing teams and content editors, which we need now because the landscape's changing, to protect and promote the brand, even at the point of content editing. Again, where is it going? Nobody's got a crystal ball, and it's, the pace of change is so rapid. It's crazy. You have a model coming out one week and the next week that gets blown out of the water by something else. But I'd go back to previous technological shifts, and I'm old enough to have seen the dot-com bubble. And I know that was mentioned in the talk this morning. But what we always tend to see is that we have a sort of period where it's a little bit crazy, but the fundamentals are put in place. And when the dust settles, we've got a new sort of foundation of technology in place. And then we start to see innovation happen on top of that technology. And I think that's what's happening here. Even if the AI bubble bursts, as we heard this morning, it's not going anywhere. We'll still have all of that infrastructure there. We'll still have all of the services to build on top of and innovate on. So it's here to stay. If we look at the past, going back again, we started to see things like infrastructure as code creeping in. Then we saw AWS and Azure services start to pop up that we can build on top of. Same thing here. So what I think is going to happen, we're going to start to see some really innovative use cases and applications that we could never imagine even a few years ago. We all know that. And AI is a fundamental shift for everyone. I have really no idea how it works. I grew up with, 2-week sprints and things like that. Now you can vibe code something or develop something with the assistance of AI much more quickly. So it's just kind of crazy to me. It's a fundamental shift. But for the next generation coming through, this is going to be in their life. It's going to be automatic, natural, second nature. And alongside that, consumer expectations are going to continue to increase as we become more comfortable with convenience that LLMs and AI bring. And the shift to agentic AI is even happening now. Might have happened during this talk. But with the pace of AI the way it is, it's crazy. We might, it's not hard to imagine a future, right, where beyond AEO, we're not just getting answers at source within the LLM, but we're actually driving conversions within the LLM. So it's a classic use case, which I'm sure you've all heard, but booking flights, hotels, taxis, restaurants, the AI can do that on our behalf. So to wrap up, I think the best we can do, given the current landscape, is to hedge our bets by carefully structuring our content in a deliberate way, having the tools in place to monitor that content and help us with it, and build for both humans and robots, using those tools to help ensure that our content is clear and concise, communicates authority and expertise, and conveys awareness of the user journey and intent. And I hope that by doing that, we can position ourselves to protect and promote our brands in a way that resonates with both robots and humans.
Great time for a question. 3 minutes. Is that okay? Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
As you know, we are one of your customers. I'm looking after the websites here at the University of Salford, so it's very interesting to hear you talk. I think the idea is only 50% of the traffic, which is made me giggle because that is massively underestimating the amount of AI bot-driven bot traffic that we're seeing.
Right.
What I found really interesting about what I hadn't fully appreciated before was we're currently working to try and manage those noisy bots, and we're working with you guys to implement Acquia.
Yep.
And I was not really fully understanding the role that our user queries were carrying out in terms of driving even more bot traffic. My concern hearing your talk is how do we know if we're doing incredibly well now from the classic EAC stuff you said, from the SEO stuff, from the structured HTML, all the classic things that we know work in terms of discoverability work for AI just as well. How do we know if we implement noisy bot protection that we're not going to damage the position, the posture that we have as an organisation? We're currently doing incredibly well in that front.
Yeah.
How do we know if we're causing harm? Because it's quite black box.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be. You really, it comes down to how you analyse that traffic initially, right? So and how you categorise it. Are you talking about, when you say noisy bots, LLMs or?
I'm talking about our users are clearly using AI to assist them to understand the offering that this university provides.
Yeah. And
that's working very, very well. My concern as somebody who wants to get students to come here and start to work here is that we could, by implementing any kind of controls over bot traffic, negatively impact our position in those existing returns.
Yeah. So in terms of those bots, the noisy bots, we're not advocating blocking them or stopping them from accessing the content. We do want them to access the content. But we're maybe talking about putting nice guardrails in place so that they're not causing problems for us. So I gave that example earlier where traffic was coming to the site for one of our customers and causing a huge resource drain and problems in terms of exploding traffic. But that was just because it was running very sort of specific search queries and getting stuck in loops and things like that. Yeah. So, I mean, we've got a blog post on this type of thing, right? So one of the problems we have is with faceted search. So the bots can sometimes go down a rabbit hole because you've got so many combinations of faceted search. So we've actually got some guidance. Seb's got his hand up, but we've got some guidance on our website and our blog around how we can control that type of thing with WAF rules and stop them kind of going crazy while still serving up answers.
I'll update you next year on that.
Seb, did you want to?
Yeah, well, on that one, sorry,
Seb's a colleague at Plant.
that one is we have different layer of protection. For some document, we recommend to use log management using Cloudflare or Acquia, and with that you can restrict how the AI can give your service and for your website. Specifically for FASEC and stuff like that, you can say to the board manager, I have no permission to do this kind of stuff, I have permission to do and other stuff.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.